Welcome to TV20 News. I'm Dan Monroe. I sat down once again with Dr. Jonathan Ernest, Assistant Professor of Economics at the Case Western Reserve University Weatherhead School of Management, to discuss ways of getting your finances ready for 2025. I am pleased right now to be joined by Dr. Jonathan Ernest, Assistant Professor with the Department of Economics at the Weatherhead School of Management at Case Western Reserve University. Dr. Ernest, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's the new year. We're talking about finances, and what are some things people should know to be able to set themselves up right now to carry them through the next 12 months financially stable?
Yeah, so it's a joyous time of year. It's fun to kind of end the year on a bang, prepare for the new year. Lots of people are making resolutions, trying not to have those slip away too quickly. Hopefully can stick with them well into the new year. And it's a great time to sit down and plan out financially for 2025. You have a lot of things that you can do now to make sure that you have a budget, that you have a plan for investments, that you have plans to pay down debts, all these sorts of things that are going to be, expenses going out the door, other costs that you may face that you want to understand now, so you can know, some idea of how much money will be coming in this year, some idea of how much will be going out, so that by the end of the year you can end it in a positive manner compared to where you are, and hopefully have a nice happy holidays at the end of 2025.
So why is making a budget so important, especially for a family with kids? Why is it so important to really sit down and do that? And how can someone start that who may have never done that before?
Yeah, so it's really strongly recommended to make a budget. Just look at how much money you have coming in, maybe from one job, it may be from side hustles, whatever you have. If you're having a nice garage sale that you're going to sell some old items, those dollars come in too, and then figuring out how you want to spend those. You don't have to spend them immediately, how you might want to invest them, how you might need to pay down debts that you've taken on in the past. If you're paying off a car loan, if you're paying on a mortgage, if you're paying on student loans, any of those things, it's important to understand how many dollars are allocated to those different buckets, so you know how much you have left to spend on other necessities like food and electricity. Some of those costs can vary quite considerably depending on how snowy of a January and February we get, how cold it gets. Those costs can skyrocket pretty fast, and so you want to make sure that you have those things budgeted, and then you have a little bit of money that that you can do some fun things with. And so budgeting all of that out helps you to not overextend yourself on one part or another, so that you can be sure that you're covering all of those necessities, and hopefully have enough money to set aside a little bit for something like an emergency fund, and maybe a little bit extra to go out and have a little bit of fun during the kind of dark, gloomy winters. It's still nice to be able to use some of those hard-earned dollars to do some fun things.
One thing my wife and I like to do is around this time is sit down and we talk utilities. Let's look at the utilities. How much we pay last year for gas? One up in the winter, electricity one up in the summer, and so we kind of figure out and set that aside. How important is it of looking at your past to set up for the future? Yeah,
it's great to look at that, to know, kind of get an estimate for what those costs may be. They may be a little bit different. The price that you're paying per kilowatt hour for electricity or whatever else may have changed a bit, but you can at least adjust your consumption to some degree and say, hey, this is much more expensive or much cheaper this year. Maybe we want to make sure we're turning those lights off, setting the thermostat a few degrees differently, those sorts of things to make sure that you're not completely spending your budget on that one item. And you want to keep in mind that some costs are sort of necessities and some sort of fixed, and others can vary. But knowing what those costs are can really help you plan for this year. And sometimes you have an opportunity to affect what those costs are. So with things like utilities, you might have options to compare who the service is provided through. We always like, as economists, having some of that competition in place so that you can say, well, I haven't checked who I have my insurance with or who I have my power delivered through lately. Maybe one company is offering a better rate than another. It might make sense to make some of those decisions going into the new year when you're already sitting down and making those budgets, so if you might be able to get a cheaper rate. So
you talked about it a bit before. I like to revisit it again, but emergencies come up, not just medical, but medical is one, especially the car. I can't tell you how many times I wake up and I have to take the car in, and it's another $250 or more. Setting aside money to prepare for emergencies, how can one do that?
Yeah, so it's very important because you don't know what those unexpected things might be, right? And you want to have some dollars set aside that are fairly what we call liquid, right? You don't want to have to sell your house to pay for some new, tires for your car. And so you want some dollars that you can access fairly easily. Usually what that means is that if you have some extra dollars, you're going to keep them in maybe a high yield savings account, something like that, where you can get some return on those dollars, keep up with inflation a little bit, and not lose too much purchasing power, but also have that money accessible in case those surprise costs do come up. But you don't want to keep such a large emergency balance that you're missing out on investing those dollars somewhere that would get a higher return. So what you really want to do is make sure you have just a small kind of nest egg of dollars for those unexpected expenses so that you're able to handle them before they get even worse, right? If you find out that your tires, a little bit too old, might run into some problems. You don't want that to get worse by having your tire blow out on the side of the road, causing a larger accident and having even more expensive bills. So that's why you want a little bit of funds that you can address that without taking out huge loans on a credit card to pay for it or something like that.
Cost of living. Every year prices go up regardless. Sometimes they come down, mostly they go up a little bit. And some businesses give their employees a cost of living adjustment, a COLA. How can people look at that and be aware that, okay, this is not like, let's just go on a spending spree, but be conservative about those cost of living adjustments? Yeah,
so we think about this a lot in economics because we do have that people might take a little bit of time to figure out how much their items that they're purchasing are really costing and how much the dollars they're earning can really purchase, right? And so you might have what we call money illusion, where you think that you're now earning more dollars and can purchase more things than you actually could because you say, I got a 10% raise at work. That would be phenomenal for most people. And you say, well, I can go buy 10% more things. But that's not necessarily the case because if, let's say, an instance a couple years ago, we had inflation of almost 10%. For some individuals, the things you buy might have gone up by even more than that. And so actually, in reality, once we pull things into what we call real terms and adjust for inflation, you might have less purchasing power than you had before that raise. Typically what we see is hopefully you get a 4% raise at work and prices go up by 2%, and so you can purchase about 2% more items this year than you could the year before, but it's going to vary significantly based on the consumer. Some people are locked into a mortgage that you're paying the same amount. That doesn't adjust even when everything else gets more expensive, and you say, well, that's a large portion of my budget. That's now becoming a smaller relative portion of my budget because my budget went up as my pay went up. And so now I have more dollars outside of paying for housing that I can stretch to pay for the groceries that are more expensive, the other utilities, those sorts of things.
Finally, wrap this up. So what do people need to know? What are some big tips you can think of as they go into the new year?
Yeah, so the great thing about planning for the new year and making resolutions is it's a really good time to be proactive and get ahead of things, right? So not only making a budget, making sure that you have an understanding of what costs you'll have, how much you should have in revenue coming in and where those dollars should be going, but you can also start to get ahead. You'll start getting, tax forms over the next month or so. You can get ahead of that where you're not rushing in right before the deadline in April to get those dollars in, especially if you're expecting any sort of a refund. It's great to go ahead and file for that, have those dollars flow in, and then you can have access to them, whether you need to add that to your emergency fund or save them potentially for a future time, maybe start to invest them a little. It's great to get those dollars in your pocket earlier so that you can invest and get ahead of those changes in costs and actually create some real value.
Dr. Jonathan Ernest, thank you so much for everything we talked about today. I'm sure it's helpful for many people out in the audience, so thank you very much.
Happy to be here. Have a good 2025.
Absolutely. Stay tuned with more TV20 News coming up next. Now let's turn it over to TV20 health reporter Richard Stewart for this week's health update.
Happy holidays, everybody. As we embark upon 2025, we want to talk New Year's dieting and adopting resolutions. And to do so, we're joined by registered dietitian nutritionist Amanda Liptak. She's also CEO of Nutrient Rich Life. Amanda, thank you for joining us.
You bet.
So why do so many people focus on dieting when it comes to their New Year's resolution?
They see the new year as really just a clean slate. When people are wanting something tangible that they can hold on to, they maybe change their appearance, eat healthier, and really that's a result of everything that happened the month prior during the holiday season. Maybe they weren't as active as they wanted to be or didn't eat as well as they wanted to. And so now we want a new year, we want a clean slate. And so it's the idea that we can start over anew, but if you're feeling guilty over the holidays, guilt is not a reason to ignite a health transformation in the new year.
What are some of the pitfalls that people run into when facing a diet resolution for a new year?
I would say the number one pitfall is overly ambitious goals. And so we want our goals to be realistic, we want them to be timely, we want them to be measurable, and a lot of times people are trying to adopt strategies that aren't realistic, they don't fit their lifestyle, and it can be a major pitfall, causing them to start over every Monday or feel like they have to be perfect in order to achieve success.
So you want your goals to be realistic and sustainable?
Absolutely.
Okay, and also, what's the difference between a New Year's resolution and a long-term lifestyle change strategy?
Right, New Year's resolutions tend to be more diet focused. They tend to be more fad focused, what's popular at the time, whereas a sustainable strategy is more of like a long-term strategy. What we have to realize is that our health is really a journey. And so a journey doesn't have a start and stop date, right? It's just a kind of ongoing. So we really need to focus on a progress mindset. I really like to coach my clients around focusing on 1% better. You literally only need to compare yourself to you the day before and really focus on adopting 1% better approach every single day and stop trying to be perfect.
So what should someone do if they fall off the wagon and are struggling to maintain their diet goals?
Number one, I think every single person should accept that there are going to be good days and there are going to be bad days. And you may fall off the wagon and you should anticipate that. And it's okay. Sometimes a health journey is about taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It doesn't mean you're failing, it means that you're learning. And that's an opportunity to shift and pivot where necessary. The people that succeed versus the people that struggle, they know how to pivot. So it's accepting that you had a bad day and it's pivoting to move back into the habits and doing the things and eating the things that you know will serve your body.
And where can people go for evidence-based resources and support for their diet goals?
They can go to our website, nutrientrichlife.org. We offer, personalized one-on-one nutrition coaching. We also take medical insurance, so we can help people get started on the right foot. We have a ton of free resources on our website where people can really educate themselves and learn more about themselves and what direction they want to go in the new year.
Well, thank you for that great advice, Amanda, and we appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks again. Appreciate it.
She's Amanda Liptak, CEO of Nutrient Rich Life and our resident registered dietitian nutritionist. I'm health reporter Richard Stewart. Happy holidays, everyone. Back to you, Dan.
Thanks, Richard. We are constantly uploading new content on our TV20 Cleveland YouTube page, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything. You can also connect with TV20 on your favorite social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and X. Thanks for watching TV20 News. I'm Dan Monroe. From everyone here at TV20 to all of you, Happy New Year, and here's to a happy and prosperous 2025.